Mike Tomlin is Mike McCarthy with a better publicist.
Uh, That is an absolute terrible take. He just hasn't had a quarterback in 6 years. Can't blame him. Welcome back to Out of Town Yinzers, the podcast where two childhood friends moved away from Pittsburgh but still care way too much about Pittsburgh sports. I'm Joe, alongside Justin. We're here to talk about Steelers, Pirates, Pens, even Pitt every week. We won't miss a week. We'll give you the true fan reactions, the ups, of course, plenty of downs in Pittsburgh right now. Crack a beer, sip a latte. Let's jump right into it. So there's no other place really to start than to start with Mike Tomlin. It is the bombshell of news for the Pittsburgh sports landscape. I think we've kind of already talked about Justin's take. He's been on the kind of the other side. So Justin, kind of elaborate. Why are you out on Tomlin, and why have you been?
Right, just to be clear, I don't actually believe he's Mike McCarthy with a better publicist. Now, that being said, you look at win percentage, regular season, playoff wins, um, well, Super Bowls obviously head to head, one and zero. I mean, if you look at the stats, I mean, it's hard not to think, okay, are what these guys a lot more even? Is Mike McCarthy maybe getting a bad, the raw end of the deal if you talk about the two? I don't want to make it about Mike McCarthy, but it is crazy when you look at a comparable coach and you think, what are we really doing here? Especially, and we will get into this. We're gonna have plenty of time to talk about Mike Tomlin for the next 8 months or so, but I think at the end of the day, the national media's thoughts on Tomlin, when you compare him to comparable coaches and just their take in general on the view of fans in Pittsburgh, I think is a little unfair. And I say it as someone who I've been saying for years, 2, 3 years at this point at least. I think we need to start getting ready for what's coming next. And to me, I lived in Philly when everything happened with Andy Reid, and it was the same thing. It was the same narrative. It was the same. Well, what are you gonna, who are you gonna replace him with? You don't keep a coach just because who are we gonna replace him with? That's the wrong reason. You're looking at things in the wrong order. So I do love Mike Tomlin. I think he's an incredible leader. If I was gonna run a business, he'd be the number one coach in the NFL.
Leader of
He's gonna be
men.
good at anything he does. Yeah, yeah. So I just want to be clear. I do love Mike Tomlin. I think everyone in Pittsburgh is appreciative of what he's done. And the only people that aren't, 2 to 3 years from now, they'll have the same opinion. They just need a little time. So
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people can roast Tomlin, but the winning streak is real. People can roast that as an aspect because that's a floor when you think of the winning streak. It's not the ceiling every year, it's the floor. So if the floor is still winning, that's pretty damn good for 19 years. He's also going to be a Hall of Fame coach. I think everyone can kind of go with that. So that's three straight Hall of Fame coaches for the Steelers. You really can't sneeze at that. The big thing in the NFL, and everyone knows it, is you're in purgatory until you have a quarterback. And the Steelers haven't had a quarterback since Ben blew out his elbow in the second game against the Seahawks back in 2019. Now, on the other side of that, Tomlin, the coach, is one thing. Tomlin, the front office guy, and how much he had to say over the roster itself is a whole nother story. I think the fact that the Steelers couldn't find another quarterback, Kenny Pickett being one of those that didn't work out as a Pittsburgh guy, but that's been their demise is the roster itself and just kind of the quarterback. I think Tomlin could win with a roster. He's proven that. And his last chance at really winning a Super Bowl was 2018 was the last time he had a quarterback.
yeah, and that what you said, and I had it in my notes too. It's when you take Tomlin out here, that's one variable. You take that out. Now we'll know. Like, was he making the decisions? How much of a say did he have in the roster? And to your point, like that 19 years, I don't think that's ever going to be broken. I mean, do you think that in the modern day NFL, the way that works, that's going to be broken anytime soon? Yeah,
I don't think you'll have someone
I can't.
coaching 19 years, let alone having
Oh
that
yeah,
streak.
yeah. Now, the one thing I will say, you talked about that being a four. My issue, and you know that we talked about this for years, but my issue was they were making decisions to the floor to keep the floor high as opposed to the ceiling higher. Shanahan, I think, he has 4 losing seasons or something like that. Who would you take over that same span, like the results from one or the other? You trade you trade for Minka, you trade a first. I got roasted for years for saying you don't give up what at 0-3 with Ben Hurt, you don't give up a first that could be a top 10 pick for a non-leverage position like a safety. Now, Minka was incredible
It worked
for those
out.
first 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, looking back, I'd like a shot at Herbert with that pick. That's probably about where it would have ended up if you don't trade for Minka. I mean, I'll be the first to admit they probably won a couple games because of, that trade. So,
Yeah, and that's just the fact of the matter. You really don't get quarterbacks unless you're in the top half of the draft.
yeah.
You don't have to be one of the 5 worst teams, but to be in that 15 to 22 range every year, that's a tough place to be. And really,
The
they
hit
just
rate on
haven't taken many swings when you think
right,
about it. At the end of
right.
the day, like Kenny Pickett was a swing. The fact that we're still talking about Mason Rudolph as one of those swings
Yeah.
from so long ago. I mean, if they just took some swings, just even in the last draft, they'd taken a defensive lineman when you didn't even have Aaron Rodgers on the roster at that point.
That's the band-aids that I was talking about. Like you're playing for your floor, you're drafting a running back in the first round. You're trying to, hang on to what you have going as opposed to building for the future. They just haven't been doing that. And again, we don't know. Is that Tomlin? Was he making those decisions? How much of those decisions we don't know. So that's what, you remove that variable. Now maybe we find out. So
And that's the question. Where do the Steelers go from here? You already see the list of coaches in a coaching search. So I think that's kind of the next topic we'll move to. I know you have some thoughts on that. So I'll let you jump in first.
yeah, so in terms of this is one year where I don't know that I have a strong opinion on like, hey, I want this guy. Again, in the perfect world, obviously, I think we all want. At this point, it would be nice, especially knowing there's going to need to be a quarterback coming. Maybe we go the offensive route. I just don't know that there's, a 30-year-old. I mean, that's, Udinsky from Jacksonville, Shieldhouse from LA. Like those guys they haven't even called plays yet. Which again,
Yeah.
you could convince me that you don't need to call plays to be, a great head coach. But I mean, if you want to develop a quarterback, I think you want to see that. So I think these offensive coaches have been so picked over because everyone wants them that, maybe you zig the zigging when you should be zagging or vice versa. Maybe it is to go another defensive coach. I do think it'll be Shula, if I had to guess. And there are a couple guys I would be okay with, but I don't know that there's like an obvious one per se.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what I was mentioning before, the Rooneys have made this hire, so this is a different Rooney making this hire than the last one, but still kind of the Rooney mindset on those hires. I don't see a reason why you'd break the mold, which is kind of that young up and coming coach that maybe not has fully proven his worth that they'll take a chance on. So that's why I think a Shieldhouse could be in that running. I think Shula and the defensive coaches are kind of rising to the top, like you mentioned, just from a standpoint. I do think that no matter who they hire at that top spot, they just have to be better at the rest of the staff. I think,
Mhm.
going back to Tomlin, if we rehash for a second, I think one of the big things that's a black mark on him is he's there 19 years, but has zero coaching tree. His hires at a coordinator position have just not been good. I mean, Matt Canada looked bad the moment he signed him. As a Pitt guy too, like we should be more into Matt Canada than others, and that turned
Yeah,
out
yeah.
terribly. And it's just even the defensive side, since LeBeau, I feel like they haven't had a coordinator that was a above average coordinator in that spot either. So either
I mean
way, I
his
think
coaching
whoever you
tree.
hire at the top has to be able to hire a better staff all the way down.
Yeah, 1,000%. His coaching tree. I saw an argument. I think it was last night or the other night about does he even have a tree? And it was basically Arians. And the argument was is Arians a Tomlin guy or is he a Cowher guy? Because Cowher hired him. He kept him on and then he fired him. And the argument was that is one tree, which again there's so many crazy stats both ways, pro and for Tomlin. And again, at the end of the day, we're all we all love Tomlin, but it is crazy. 19 years and you don't have a coaching tree is wild.
It says a lot of what other people think about who you're hiring. Even that, like you
Yeah.
mentioned with Arians, I don't think you could give Arians to Tomlin by any means, but Tomlin was obviously most successful in his first 3 to 4 years as coach, and that's when he had LeBeau and Arians as his lieutenants. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think the hiring has been tough, and that matters more than you think it does as a fan most of the time. It's kind of what
But
those
I do think
coordinators
it
do.
can get a little out of hand with some of these, like, at one point, I think Cliff Kingsbury got a job with the Cardinals because he once had a conversation with Sean McVay and Shanahan. It gets a little crazy at times. Like, I saw a whole thing on Shieldhouse the other night where, he essentially is in line of like the last four guys that did this Tuesday night briefing, and every single one of them, Zach Taylor was the first one, every single one becomes a head coach. But at the same time, like there's a reason you get to sit there and pick McVay's brain, and you're kind of an understudy, and there's something to be said for that. There's a reason these guys keep panning out. It's not just the personnel either. So
Is there anybody in the coaching search that you're an absolute no on that's been rumored to the Steelers?
I don't know that I don't know that I'm a no. The one I can't remember, the coordinator for the Panthers was one name I hadn't heard until last night that kind of came up. Someone said basically he was a dark horse because they were comparing him to Tomlin, kind of coming out of nowhere. I could easily see them hiring someone like that. They might be the one franchise that really truly cares about interviewing, because I think they really do look into it. They put a lot of emphasis on it. Where, I mean, let's be honest, some of these teams they've already they've already made their decision before they're even talking to half of these people.
Yeah. This is definitely a scenario where I feel like I'm better off being a Monday morning quarterback on the
Yeah.
aspect than in there since we're not in the interviews and things of that nature. But
The one
so
the one
I
thing I
think feel
will
like the same
say,
thing. I just want the young up and coming coach. So don't give me
the
that
one
coach
thing
that's kind
I
of already at the end of his career.
right, right. And I don't that's to your point, that's not their MO. I shared the stat the other day, the last time the Steelers hired a coach over 37. I think it was 1965. He was a World War II vet. He was an All-American at Pitt in the 1930s, and he worked in a coal mine in the summer. So it's been a while, to put it lightly. So the one thing I will say, and this is where we might differ a little bit on the Rooneys, is I have concerns about Art Rooney the second versus Dan, and how much I really trust him. The one thing I've been discussing this with other Steelers fans. The one thing that worries me a little bit is Art just going to do what he thinks he should do, and it concerns me that like he might go a Flores, just because he's like, oh, he's comfortable with him, and again, maybe Flores is the right hire. I actually, again, you could talk me into a lot of these guys. It's just I don't want them making the move for the wrong reasons. And again, I don't. You could convince me that again, to your point, they have the track record where that shouldn't be the expectation. But yeah, I agree with you. I think we'll see who it is, and then I do that OC hire will be really important if and it's seeming like it might be a defensive coach. I do like how some of the OC hires could line up with these guys. So
Yeah, that does seem like the most likely scenario. It is interesting though that with the Tomlin flip over, there's immediate connecting the dots on how that matters to roster management and what this offseason's looking from that standpoint. So we have, like you mentioned, we have months to talk about it. There's a NFL does great job of having their schedule throughout the offseason that'll give us stuff to talk about. But anything that really comes to mind for you when it comes to roster management?
I just think they need to. We talked about it before. The hit rate just falls off drastically after the top 10 of the quarterbacks. And I was relatively a Jackson Dart guy until it got close and he really started jumping up. But like, it's just so hard to, you know, it's one thing just to have a quarterback that's startable outside the top 10. It's another one to have a difference maker. So I just think I think they need to go full rebuild. And there's more reasons than just the quarterback for that, but I think they need to go full rebuild. And what that means, again, there's a lot that goes into that, but I do think they need to go full rebuild to some extent.
And I kind of want to rebuke and rebuff, some of the kind of tried and true narratives around the Steelers roster right now is that, it's old, it's paid too much, things of that nature. The youth movement has already started. Omar's last two drafts have been really good in terms of getting solid players on the roster. When I think of that defense, you have Cam Hayward on that defensive line, but, they may not have taken Jackson Dart, but at least they took a good player in the first round. Derek Harmon looks really good. Y.A. Black looks good. Their edges with Herbig and Sawyer both look solid. Joey Porter Jr. had a really good year. He's still young coming into his own. The offensive line on the Steelers side with Zach Frazier, Faltanu, McCormick, having that right side of the line kind of locked down from one draft. You can argue, how good is Faltanu versus, what he should have been. Didn't look very good against Houston, but, not many people do. But at the same time, there's pieces to that roster that are already there. So I think a rebuild is a stronger aspect. There's definitely gaps, obvious ones, skill positions, quarterback. You don't have a team until you have a quarterback. We talked about that, but I do think that there are some pieces there that it's not a full rebuild, and they don't have cap issues. Like, there's some things they can turn around quickly if they get a couple things right.
It's just the top end talent. And I know that's, obviously everyone is looking for top end talent, but like they filled, to your point, they filled a lot of, well, we'll see. We don't know for sure, but they went about things the right way. It's just about now, and we've talked about this before. Name me a top, half of the league player at their position on offense. They just don't have one. And you can't win in today's NFL, even if you have a quarterback. You just have, unless it's Josh Allen, basically, you don't have and he has James Cook, and he's got a solid line. But like, you just can't. That's just not, like, what were we doing the last 2 years? Trying to win with what we've had. So,
yeah. The receiver position has just been a big question mark. I mean, you can give Omar a lot of credit in some instances, but to walk into the last 2 years with that wide receiver room, that's just a tough look. It just felt like they were looking for a Hail Mary at some point in the summer, be it a Brandon Ayuk that 1 year or what have you. And then, obviously Pickens had his own reasons of why he got traded away, but they still traded away George Pickens without replacing a wide receiver too. And you can kind of see that in the way that the season played out, is not having a wide receiver too with a DK. And DK's a solid player, but not having anybody else with him, it's just almost impossible, like you said, to move the ball consistently.
DK isn't a number one he's going to carry an entire. He's not a Justin Jefferson where he's going to carry the rest of your receiving core and demand so much coverage that it's going to open things up. I mean, we're going to look back on this year, and it's going to be like, it will be a trivia game. It'll be, remember the one when the Steelers had Thielen and Gainwell making, realistic, we need to depend on these guys. I mean, that's crazy that we did. And they did. I do think Omar didn't want to overpay. Now look, like, I didn't want him to overpay for Myers. Looking back now, I mean, Myers looks great, but what does he look like if he's with the Steelers? He doesn't look like he did in Jacksonville. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I can't believe they went into the season with what they did at receiver. It's a wild move. But again, I don't think he wanted to. I guess things just didn't work out. I don't know, but there's really no excuse for that. So,
yeah, I mean, they have draft capital this year. They're absolutely going to take another swing at receiver, and hopefully a swing at quarterback, within the first two picks.
Yeah,
So,
apparently I read the fourth best draft capital, depending on what like charts you use and things like that. There's a big gap between like the Jets and a couple of their teams. But you could argue they have top 5 draft capital. So
absolutely. So the Steelers haven't won a playoff game for a long time, but the real question is, are the Pirates going to be the next team in Pittsburgh to win a playoff game? And I think so. I think yes. I'm going to hop in here first from a Pirates standpoint.
You take it. Yeah, you take this one.
Our listeners will know over time. Pirates are definitely where I've landed. I've bled Pirates all the way through, so I know them way more than I should. And really, it's probably time of year. I'm always optimistic in January because why not? But this is a year where there's legit reason to be optimistic about the Pirates. number one, I think people kind of overshoot what you actually need to get to make the playoffs. We're really only talking about 85 wins, mid 80s in wins. So it's not an unrealistic number to get to. And two, and I think this is where everyone starts, and you can start and end, is the starting pitching is absolutely legit. Paul Skeens goes without saying, but Mitch Keller won't even be the number two by the end of the year. Bubba Chandler is going to be that guy. You also have just another of a plethora of young guys coming up behind that'll play this year. So it's just going to be a full rotation, throwing hard, that'll keep you in every game. And when you think of that roster and kind of the lineup of the roster, last year there was just way too many holes, and this year there still are holes, but there's no question there are fewer holes. The right side of the infield is a legit right side of the infield. When you think of Lau and Horwitz, you have other legit bats with O'Hearn, Reynolds, and Cruz. And really the wild card of it all from a Pirates fan is Connor Griffin is that guy. You don't want to say that too loud in Pittsburgh when you've had the Chad Hermansons, the Gregory Polanco's, who have been that number one prospect at some point, but there has not been a guy that I've followed since I've been looking at prospects that looks like Connor Griffin, and he could legit make an impact this year at six, at shortstop. There would just be a complete lineup changer. So it's real for the Pirates.
So, okay. I don't disagree with anything you just said. Are we the first pod in the history of pods that talk about the Pirates that the first Pirates question is a playoff question? I can't imagine there's another one that started that way, right?
I mean, it's the time. It is what it is. When you have a
I'm
Cy
not
Young
saying you're
starting
wrong.
quarter,
It's just, yeah, yeah. I mean, to answer your question directly, I do think you're right. That's what's great. That again, I think that says a lot more. And again, I don't. It's not unfair to say this, I guess, the Pirates, but it says a lot more about where we are in where we have been the last 7 years. I remember 2 years ago, I said I think we're the only sports city with two or more teams that hasn't won up. We have the longest drought, and that was 2 years ago, and it was true. We looked it up. We were the longest city without a playoff win in what was it, 7 years at that point, or whatever the number was. But yeah, I do think that's right. I do think the Pirates could. Again, I guess technically we'll talk about the Penguins, but I guess technically they could sneak in. I don't think so, but I think the answer to your question is yes. And Connor Griffin has to be the most. He's by far the most exciting player on any of our teams. Correct? I mean, is there a close second?
Skeens would be number
Well,
one.
I meant like up and coming, a guy like coming up that we
yeah.
don't. Yeah.
From a prospect standpoint, yeah.
Yeah.
He's really the best hitting prospect since McCutchen for sure for the Pirates. It's not even close.
When was the last time in our lifetime the two players we were most excited about on any of our teams were Pirates?
I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think that has happened. For most of my life, the Pirates were drafting your Daniel Moskos and the Brian Bullingtons and things of that nature in the first round. So it's
worried about who was the agent for guys and not picking them as a result. So yeah.
But baseball is broken. So I think that has to be said too, and we all know that.
Great timing with that.
Yeah, it's more evident for Pittsburghers than it is for anybody else. But when you see the Dodgers signing the best free agent again, just with unlimited money, it's just absolutely insane. They pay almost more than double in luxury tax than the Pirates pay for their entire payroll. So just the tax on their payroll is double the Pirates' payroll. It's one of those things that just you either care about it as a ownership team and things of that nature, or you don't. But at the end of the day, this is a labor strike year, so December 26th is a big time for baseball. And really, if you take a step back, as the players will have plenty of time to talk about it. But as a players' association, there are many more players that are kind of in that minor league, get a cup of coffee, they're in the league for 3-4 years than there are Kyle Tuckers. And those guys that are in that 3 to 4 year range, never really make that second contract. Those are the guys that just aren't making the money they're supposed to, given the revenue share. So, and they could really turn the tide in terms of what baseball looks like. So, we'll see. I think it's going to be an exciting year for 26 under the current rules, and then there could be a kind of a restack the DAC aspect, and part of that's making the Pirates spend more. A part of it too.
Right.
So
The
it's
floor
the
is just
floor
as
goes with it
important
with
as
the
the
cap too.
ceiling. Yeah.
But we talked about Pirates, kind of moving from Pirates to Penguins now. Again, that's the thing of our podcast. We're going to try to hit on all four of the major sports every time we talk, even if it's a little out of season. So, Penguins though, first time we're talking about the Penguins today, and really, I think the story, as it has been pretty much our whole adult lives, Crosby's the same age as me, is Crosby. His greatness is unbelievable. And, he's dragging the Penguins to relevance, but are they even relevant, or is it really just a Crosby, swan song?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, the question in general, like, I mean, the only reason they're even remotely relevant is because of him. I mean, Malkin, Letang, especially Letang, they're fading. I mean, Carlson is what he is, and that move is what it was. But I mean, the level he's playing right, I think he scored his 25th goal last night at 38. That's ridiculous. And the level to the specifics of the question. No, I don't think they're going on some deep run. I don't think they're close. My hope was just one last playoff run towards the end of his career, but I didn't expect him to be playing at this level. I mean, I knew he would be, he's Crosby, so you're never going to, assume that he's not going to do something. But like this level is kind of ridiculous. I mean, at this level with his size, it's not like he's a 6'6" guy that's just pushing people around. You figure out he's going to lose a step. But I mean, I don't see much of a dip. I mean, I saw the stats the other day. Like his numbers are consistent over the last 3 years. I mean, that's a whole different level. I mean, he didn't need the longevity really for his career to put him on any level that he was or wasn't at. But this is just a whole different aspect that no one even really talked about until now. So
He's special, and that's the story of being a Penguins fan, is that we've just been lucky to watch special players. Kind of piggyback each other. So,
yep.
Knocking on any wood around me that happens again. But, we got to enjoy Crosby while he's here. It's one of those things, too, when you have that team, when you have a Malkin, you have a Letang, you kind of just ride it out. You're like, we're going to see what happens, and then we're going to sleep in the bed that is that decision. And that's where they are right now.
It was so good for so long. It's kind of the opposite of the Steelers, where we were, we're dissecting every move. It's like, at the end of the day, these guys want to play together. Like, who's going to tell them no? You can't play together. With what they've done. So,
yeah, and hockey, unlike baseball, has a really good cap system, really tight.
Yep.
The Pens have a lot of cap space. They have a lot of draft picks. They have the ability to turn things around faster. If they make the right moves. So. Definitely, going back to that playoff question, the Penguins can make the playoffs. You can make the playoffs in the NHL.
They are in a playoff spot, I think, today. And I don't know that they're going to stay there. They shouldn't be buying or anything, but yeah.
Yeah, and just by how baseball works and how hockey works, they'll get a playoff win if they go into a series. So to answer that last question, if the Pens just make the playoffs before the Pirates do, they'll kind of click on that. But our last kind of round robin of the episode, sticking on the playoff trend. You're already shaking your head because this is not even a legitimate question, but we're about a couple of days away. We're recording on Friday, the January 16th, but a couple of days away from the national championship. Great playoff so far. I'm an Ohio State fan as well, Ohio State alum, kind of later in life, but Pitt first. The question today, though, is Pitt have any chance to, dabble and make a playoff in 2026? And if so, what has to happen to make that happen?
So part of me just wanted to say no and move to the next question as soon as I read this question. At first I was like, oh, Joe's just trying to mess with me by putting this question in here. So I'll give you more than no because we're on a podcast. But so Pitt just lost 3 of their best 5 players to the portal. They've lost 3 of their best. I would argue they lost their best player 3 of the last 4 years, starting with, or 3 of the last 4 years, starting with Addison. So there's only some. And again, to take that one step further, 5 of their best 8 players. They lost a linebacker, their best linebacker, best D lineman, best offensive lineman, best receiver, up and coming tight end, and Mason Heinchel was just contacted by Miami. It was the rumor they were willing to pay him, and I wouldn't have brought that up if not for an hour ago. Duke's quarterback just entered the portal with 2 hours left, and he's going to Miami. So I do believe it now. But yeah, Pitt's not going to compete with Notre Dame, Michigan, LSU, Texas, Texas Tech, and Miami for, money wise. So to answer your question, no, they're not going to make the play. I am excited about Heinzel. I really am. It's just, can you be that excited about any one player if you're not a top 20 money team? And Pitt's obviously not like, they're not knocking on the door of 20, obviously. So let's run through this question real quick. But yeah, LSU, Michigan, Texas, Texas Tech, Notre Dame. Those are the schools that Pitt just lost 5 of their best 8 players to. So
Yeah, no, money talks in college football now. There's no
yes,
way around that when it comes down to it. Pitt won't pay that much, but at the same time, um, you know, the playoff is going to expand. 12 is not going to be
mhm,
where it lands up. Going to 16, maybe going to a 24, that is hugely beneficial to a program like Pitt. And I do think, because I'm watching it as a quasi Ohio State fan, is that the depth at a program like an Ohio State is not the same as it used to be either, and that's because that depth is moving to programs like Pitt and things of that nature too. So the talent's moving up and down across the landscape. It's just constantly moving. The roster turnover is insane when it comes to college football now. So I'm with you. This is the odds of Pitt being that team, not great. That's not even
I
counting
will
kind of
say
just
if
the pitting.
the portal went the opposite direction and they added and were able to keep, I wouldn't have shocked me. It's just not going to be the reality for them, unfortunately. It's just so hard when you lose your best player 3 or 4 years. It's kind of brutal. So, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about Pitt. Obviously, you had some notes on expectations. I do completely agree. Like I do think, I think you had mentioned like making the playoff for them is like a national championship. I agree. Winning the ACC to me as a fan was literally like a Super Bowl, which sounds crazy to a lot of people, but it was. So
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of college football too, is that there's just
exactly.
different goals to programs, and I think making the playoffs is Pitt's goal. Doesn't feel like 2026 is going to be that way,
No,
unless you're going to be a silent donor and have some cash in your back pocket that we don't know
no,
about.
I don't have oil money, unfortunately.
So, one other thing that we're just going to wrap up the podcast with, we're going to try to do this in some way, shape, or form every podcast as well, is look back and kind of a nostalgia type moment for Pittsburgh sports. Like we mentioned, me and Justin were childhood friends. We grew up across the street from each other. We grew up in the 90s of the Pittsburgh sports, so a lot of good stuff. But today we're going to talk about our favorite or our most memorable in-person Pittsburgh sports event. So for me, I was with my dad, went to a Penguin game, and it was one where Mario Lemieux had his 5 goal game. So to be able to see kind of Mario not only just hit that hat trick level, which always is exciting. I kept my hat on after the first 3 goals, but after he hit those next 2, I was thinking, all right, well if he gets to 6, this hat's going. He didn't quite get there, but definitely will never remember it or never forget it. And really, that kind of goes back to the Crosby question as well, as being able to go from a Mario to a Crosby with a Yager Malkin sprinkled in there is just a special thing from a fan standpoint. So always been fun to see greatness.
Was that against Gretzky when he did that, or am I thinking of a different game?
It might have been. I honestly, that's not where my mind went with the memory. So,
Yeah, I'll,
but
the only reason I say is I remember you going to see him play Gretzky when Gretzky was with the Blues, and I remember that being a big deal. It was after one of our hockey games. That's how long ago it was. We were playing
yeah,
hockey,
I mean
deck
Brett Hall
hockey.
was on
So,
that team too. So the Blues were
yeah,
stacked with some
yeah,
names you
awesome
know.
jerseys too back then. Yeah. Yeah, so mine, um, what's weird is both of mine we were at together, which is funny. So my honorable mention was the last game at Pitt Stadium. That was just being there, and especially now, it's one of those games where like the older you get, it almost like in a way, it almost means more having been there the older you get because it's something that you ask people now that like you think are our age, and unfortunately they're not. They're younger than us, and they were never even at games at Pitt Stadium. So it's really cool having that. Um, but the Max Talbot game for me, I don't even know what I don't, is there a second? Like, I don't even think there was the Max Talbot Shush game was wild. Not many people, I'm assuming, Pittsburgh fans were at that game or can say they were at that game. It was really cool. We got to go to it together. Was very nervous on the way in. We, I'll never forget an usher telling, and he didn't know, he didn't see us. We were packed in trying to get in the stadium, and he told the guy in front of us, I expect you guys to take care of all these Penguins fans by the end of the first period. I'm like, okay, this is for real. This is no joke what we're getting into. And then they went down 3-0. I remember looking at you and being like, we were in the upper deck. We're getting like, not kicked, but like people weren't, they weren't watching where they were, stepping. And I remember telling you, we're going to have to wait a while till this game's over to get out of here. Penguins came back. Crosby scored. I remember Gonchar scoring down at our end. And Crosby scored the empty netter. It was just what an experience being at that, and I skipped the part, Talbot shushing the crowd, getting destroyed in I think he fought Carcillo even in that fight, but getting destroyed in a fight and shushing. It was just such a cool moment. I remember leaving the game and it was the Eagles watch party because it was the NFL draft that
Mm-hmm.
day.
Mm-hmm.
It went back when it was on Saturdays, and the Eagles fans and the Flyers fans fighting, just being like, this is not like this is we're in a different world here. The one Eagles fan went into the porta pot and the Flyers fan pushed it over. Just an awesome experience altogether to go and see that. And then I do have one more, so I have three apparently. I got to bring up when we when we were at the Penguin game in Columbus. I looked this up today. I was like, how long ago was that? 2013, the Steelers were fighting to get into the playoffs, and we went. There were like four things that needed to happen. We're like, it'll never happen.
I think it was even
So we
more than
go to
that.
the
I think it was
game.
like a 5-6 game parlay.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yep. And I remember we were watching the games at a bar. We went to the game. We're watching that on the phone during the game. We're watching that the Chiefs needed to. I think the Chiefs needed to beat the Chargers, and the Chiefs made a stop on fourth down with less than a minute left to get the ball back. We both jump up in the middle of Nationwide Arena. You start telling the people around us the Chiefs just won. Like the Steelers are going to the playoffs. A Here We Go Steelers chant starts. It makes it around halfway around the bowl. We sit back down and you look at your phone and you go, wait, why do the Chargers? Why is this game still going? Why do they have the ball? And then we realized, I don't know if it's an offside. It was something weird, like an offsides or something. And what an incredible seeing a chant that we had basically started to go around and realizing, oh my God. And then they lost in overtime and the
Oh
Steelers did
yeah.
not go to the
No
playoffs.
question.
That was 2013, which is crazy to look back that it was that long ago. But
I think it was like a missed kick or something went wrong. And there was
something,
like
yeah, something
pre-snap
weird happened with a
whistle
kick.
that blew it.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it was. But the thing is like 2013. People don't remember. It's definitely iPhone still existed, so it was during the Tomlin era. But at the same time, there weren't very many people that could watch live TV
Right.
on
Right.
their iPhones at that time. I was using like a Slingbox feature
Yep. Yep.
because it was the only way I could watch the Pirates when I was in Columbus. So I was one of the
Right.
few people that could actually watch live TV on my phone in that scenario. So that's why I think I got a little bit more of an oomph when I was saying the Steelers made the playoffs. They also
Oh,
take
that was
over
incredible.
nationwide when they come to Pittsburgh
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
when they come to
Yep.
Columbus. So
Yeah.
well, that'll do it for us this week. We had a lot of fun. I think one of the main reasons why we're doing it is for us to bullshit and talk Pittsburgh sports every week. We'll be back again next week. This is Joe and Justin. We're the Out of Town Yinzers. See you next time.
All right. See you guys later.